morning. Welcome to church this morning. Got a sniffy nose. Welcome to church this morning. We have a great morning. This morning we start a new series on Esther. For such a time as this, if my tablet behaves itself and doesn't keep clicking onto other bits, we'll be alright. So, before we start, I just want to pray. And if you're watching on Facebook this morning, or YouTube, or Periscope, Twitter, I want to pray, and I want to pray for you as we start. We know things aren't easy. Lockdown. People are struggling in all different ways. Families are having to spend more time with each other than they've ever done before. So let's pray. If you've got a prayer request this morning, just do a little, you can either private message Restore Church, or whoever's having a watch party, just message them. Or you can just put a comment and ask for prayer this morning, and people will be praying. But welcome to church, welcome to Restore. So let's get started this morning. 7 weeks as we go through the book of Esther. It's a great book, the book of Esther. It's a real rags to riches story, a beautiful orphan girl, obscurely living in exile in a foreign land with a male cousin, who becomes queen of this humongous empire that even swallowed up her own nation. Listen, maybe you've never read the Bible before. Maybe you dip in and out of the Bible. Well, let me just give you a little bit of a background to this story. There's a villain. All good stories have a villain. There's a rescuer, a hero. There are people that need rescuing. There's death and destruction. There's love. There's heartbreak. There's lies and trickery. It's a real cliffhanger, edge of your seat, suspense thriller. Which way will it go? Does it end well? Will the hero do what they should do to become the hero? Will the villain get their way? Now listen, don't skip through to get the end. Stay with us as we go through this incredible story. It's more like Cinderella or EastEnders, if you watch EastEnders, or one of them other soaps like that, than what you would think would be in the Word of God, in the Bible. But it is here. And there are plenty more stories like that in the Bible. What you need to do is read it, and you'll see for yourself. And any questions, please send them our way, and we'll speak into it for you, or we'll try and bring some clarity on what you read. So, what can we learn from this book? How can it speak to us today? Okay, let's look at how this book unfolds. So, the story is set in Susa, 5th century BC Persia. Okay, at this point in history, this is the largest empire that the world had ever seen. 127 provinces extending over 2 million square miles, stretching from the Mediterranean coast of Turkey eastwards into Asia, south into Africa, and what is now Pakistan. Very big, very rich, very powerful king. His palaces were bedecked with gold and silver and marble and precious stones. And yet, where we are in this story, in history, 40 years on from this point, Nebuchadnezzar would return to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls under the successor of Ahasuerus. So let's read from Esther. Now in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces, in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants, the army of Persia and Media, and the nobles and governors of the provinces were before him. While he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendour and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days, and when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Susa, the citadel, both great and small, a feast lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of fine linen, purple to silver rods and marble pillars, and also couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl and precious stones. Drinks were served in golden vessels, vessels of different kinds, and royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. And drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion, for the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as each man desired. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace that belonged to King Ahasuerus. Verse 10. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abatha, Zephyr, and Carcass. The 7 eunuchs were served in the presence of King Ahasuerus to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown, in order to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command delivered by the eunuchs, and at this the king became enraged, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for this was the king's procedure towards all who were versed in law and judgment. The men next to him being Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, I wish I wouldn't have read it all now, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom, according to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she has not performed the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs. Then Memucan said in the presence of the king and the officials, not only against the king has Queen Vashti done wrong, but also against all the officials and all the peoples who are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus, for the queen's behaviour will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day the noble women of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behaviour will say the same to all the king's officials. And there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. If it please the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be repealed, that Vashti is never again to come before the king. And let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all his kingdom, for it is vast, all women will give honour to their husbands, high and low alike. This advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, that every man be master in his own household and speak according to the language of his people. Maybe that was the first suppressing of women really intentionally on purpose, I don't know. That doesn't read good, does it, when you look at it like that? So let me just come into this. 3 royal feasts where the king showed off all that he had. All the glory, riches and splendour of his kingdom for all the government officials. The first feast lasting 180 days. 180 days. That's a long party. That's a big, big party. So the second feast, a 7-day feast for all the citizens of the city. Now I looked up how many people would have lived in Susa at this time. And at this time, about 65,000 people lived in the city. So that means a 7-day party for 65,000 people. That's incredible. But the basic reason for the feast was, of course, pride. Look at me. Look at what I've got. The king wanted to impress his subjects with his wealth, his power, his majesty, and his generosity. Now listen, there was a lot of drinking. Among some of the ancients, each guest was obliged to have a drink with the current round, or else leave the party. If you didn't drink when everyone else was drinking, you had to leave the party. I have been to some parties like that, where if you didn't keep up, they left you. That was a long while ago. Okay. The Medes and the Persians had a law. This was amazing when you look at this law. The Medes and the Persians had a law that whenever the king drank, everyone else drank. So if the king was a complete lush, was a complete drunkard, that means everyone was a complete drunkard, or you left the party, which meant you had to come out of the presence of the king, and to be in the presence of the king, be in his court, is a great thing. At this second feast, the king commanded that each man could drink as he pleased, so he didn't have to follow the edict of when the king drank, you drank. It is written that a lot of decisions were made after drinking a lot. A lot of people have made bad decisions after drinking. I don't know if that's you. It was me. I made lots of bad decisions drinking. Lots of bad decisions. The third was a feast thrown by Queen Vashti for the women of the royal palace. Now, when the king had drunk his full and wanted to show off more of what he had, he then calls for his wife. According to Jewish tradition, this request came from an argument among the men at the feast as to which country had the most beautiful women. The king decided to settle the issue by putting his wife, the queen, on public display. There are some stuff that I read that the queen wouldn't have had a problem in coming with hardly any clothes on. But not at this moment. Who would want to put themselves in the middle of a load of drunken louts? Because that's basically what the king and his mates were. Just a gaggle of drunken men, of young boys. She was having none of it. I would imagine that she was tired of being shown off as an object. On one occasion, and this is just to give you an example of the king's reasoning. So, because she denied him once, get rid of her. Make sure that every woman in the whole of their kingdom, 2 million square miles, knows that the man is in control. But this is to the extent of his, I'm going to say it, madness, okay? Or his high opinion of himself. The king once executed the builders of a bridge because of an ocean storm destroyed it. He then commanded that the water and waves be whipped and chained so that it punished the sea. This is to the extent of the king would go. He knew no bounds because of his view of himself that he was a god, that he ruled and reigned everywhere. So the king and his friends make a decision which ushers in change, and they banish Queen Vashti. This pretty much sets the scene for our other three main characters in the story. We've already met the king. And then our other three characters are Mordecai, Esther, and Haman. The hero and the villain are amongst them. And then the next two chapters, we see them enter stage left. So let me just give you some more background. God's not mentioned in the book of Esther. And yet, his presence is so obvious. So what can we learn over these next 7 weeks? One thing I want us to learn, that it doesn't matter about your beginnings. This girl was an orphan in another country, in the middle of a vast empire, downtrodden because her country had become subjects of this king. And also, as I said, she was an orphan living with family. It doesn't matter about your beginnings. God has a plan for your life. Yeah, he has a plan for my life. He has a plan for everyone's life. And part of that is not to quit. Don't quit. Whatever life throws your way, do not quit. If you get given lemons, make lemonade. It's a saying I found a few years ago. I thought that was a very good saying. Let me give you a little story that may help us. And it's this. It's a story about Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest presidents in America. So President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, was born into poverty. Lincoln was faced with defeat throughout his entire life. He lost 8 elections, twice failed in business, and suffered a nervous breakdown. He could have quit many times, but he didn't, and because he didn't quit, he became one of the greatest presidents in the history of America. Lincoln was a champion, and he never gave up. Here's a quick rundown of Lincoln's road to the White House. In 1816, his family was forced out of their home and he had to work to support them. In 1818, his mother died. In 1831, he failed in business. In 1832, he ran for state legislature and lost. In 1832, also, he lost his job. He wanted to go to law school, but couldn't get in. In 1833, he borrowed some money from a friend to begin a business, and by the end of the year, he was bankrupt. And he spent the next 17 years of his life paying off this debt. In 1834, he ran for state legislator again and won. In 1835, he was engaged to be married, but his sweetheart died and his heart was broken. In 1836, he had a total nervous breakdown and was in bed for 6 months. In 1838, he sought to become Speaker of the State Legislature, and he was defeated. In 1840, he sought to become elector, defeated. In 1843, he ran for Congress, he lost. In 1846, he ran for Congress again, this time he won. and he went to Washington and did a good job. In 1848, he ran for re-election to Congress and lost. You'd give up by now. In 1849, he sought the job of land officer in his home state. Rejected. In 1854, he ran for Senate of the United States and he lost. In 1856, he sought the vice presidential nomination at his party's national convention and he got less than 100 votes. In 1858, let me just ask a question. How many would have given up at that point? With all the thousands and thousands of people that could vote, you get less than 100. Who would have given up at that point? But Abraham Lincoln had a destiny. Abraham Lincoln knew what he was called to, who he was meant to be. So that was 1856. In 1858, he ran for the US Senate again. And again, he lost. And yet in 1860, Abe Lincoln was elected President of the United States. And if you know the story and his massive part in freedom of slaves, the end of slavery in the States, read more, because this man knew nothing really but defeat. Not success, defeat and pain. And yet, he knew what he was called to and carried on. There's a saying that is famous from this book, and it's for such a time as this. And this story is a rags to riches story, and I really want to be careful this week that I don't start treading into the next week and the week after and the week after, because my job is just to give you a basic understanding of what we're going to speak about over these 7 weeks and how this can affect your life. But there's the saying from this book is for such a time as this. A rags to riches story. But I want you to understand that it's orchestrated by God. That this story is orchestrated by God. That your story is orchestrated by God. You just have to put yourself in the right place. In His presence. At the cross with Him. Where you can give all of your life to Him. That control, or who's on your throne. Who heads up your life? Who leads your life? Is it you that leads your life, or is it Jesus that leads your life? See, when you put yourself at His place, when you put Him on the throne of your life, and actually, you know what? That doesn't mean that everything's going to be rosy. That doesn't mean that everything's going to go the way. You still might end up with COVID-19. But what that means is He brings a peace to your life. Actually, you know you can face all the times when you're defeated with Him by your side. Abe Lincoln kept putting himself in the right place. He kept going. He didn't plan to fail. His time wasn't 1832. His time wasn't 1846 or 48 or 54 or 56 or 58. He was here for such a time as 1860 to become the president. That was his destiny. That was what he was here for. He could have given up in 1832. It would have been amazing if he'd have given up in 1932. He'd been dead for quite a few years. But in 1832, he could have given up when it didn't go according to his plan, his expectations. Let me ask you a question this morning. What do you do when it doesn't go your way? Maybe you feel that life has dealt you a bad hand, an unfair hand. Your circumstances aren't what they should be. It's not what you were expecting or were planning for. I don't think Esther enjoyed being an orphan or living in a foreign land, subject to a foreign king's every whim. But it didn't stop her living her life. It didn't stop her uncle, Mordecai, that you'll start finding out over these coming weeks. Didn't stop him being the man of God that he was called to be. He was destined to be. What stops you from being all that you could be? Is it that relationship that failed, that you had pinned all your hopes on? Maybe your exams didn't go the way that you wanted, so you couldn't get the job that you wanted, or go to the college or the university that you wanted. Maybe that illness wasn't a part of your life, part of your plan. If you know me, and you've known me for a long while, you'll notice I'm a lot slimmer these days. It's not because I've worked out. It's not because I took magic pills. It's not because I've dieted. Yeah, intentionally. What caused this, and I find this is a benefit, wasn't planned, wasn't on my horizon for me to go through. But in 2017, I found out I had cancer, but it wasn't part of my plan. It really wasn't. But I had a decision that I had to make at that point. Do I let it break me down? Or do I push forward into what God calls me for? And I think we need to look at sometimes how we react to things that are not our plans. We can find ourselves in places that we never planned to be. And that's not making light of anything or anything like that. But sometimes we have to let go of our plans and see what God wants to do. It's not that God gave me cancer. Cancer is a horrible, nasty, evil thing. But what do you do when things don't go your way? What stops you from being all that you could be? COVID-19's here. That wasn't our plan, wasn't your plan for this year. I wanted to go on holiday. Well, now I get to go on holiday in my garden. We didn't plan for this to happen, but it's here. The question is, how do you come through it? Do you live in fear? And do you know what? It is a scary thing. Because it's reaching all parts of society. There's not parts of society that are not getting COVID-19. But how do you come through it? I shared with some of the guys at a prayer meeting the other week. I went to a supermarket and I didn't react well. But I went to a supermarket, and as I walked into the supermarket, I cough. Sometimes if I've slept not well because of my operation for the cancer, I end up with stuff here and see, and I had to clear it. And I cleared it. And you're just used to doing life like that, because this is new. And I walked into the shop, and the security guard, instead of saying to me, "Oh, excuse me, you need to wash your hand. Could you go to the toilet before you touch anything? Just go and wash your hands," came up to me and said, "If I see you cough again, I'm going to kick you out of the shop." Now, my reaction wasn't good, because at that time I felt rather put upon, and my reaction was, "Try it." And I'm ashamed of that reaction, because actually fear brought about his speaking to me in that way, and it also brought my reaction. And we're not to be a people that live in fear. Mm-hmm. We're to people, and I've said about this before, we're not to be a people of reaction, we're to be a people of action. Mm-hmm. We're to put things in place, our relationship with God, so that we don't react. But out of fear, that man's reaction to me coughing, and I'm hoping that he doesn't do that to other people, because someone else might hit him, and it might not be COVID-19 that gets him, but someone's fist or whatever. So pray for people's fear. You know, it's not good. Fear can determine how you live, and we're not made to live in fear.
That's true.
Do you live in fear? Do you want to come through this well? Let me say this, because we're coming to an end, and then we're going to take communion. Let me say this right at the beginning of this series. You were born for such a time as this.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, we get calls every day from different organisations that want our help, that want people that need a volunteer to go and pick up food, that need a volunteer to go to the pharmacy and pick up a prescription, that maybe, can we, because people give us food too, can we help them by doing a food parcel? We can give you a mask if you want to volunteer. But how do you come through this? You were born for such a time as this. Mm-hmm. You have been born on purpose, and with a purpose. Yeah. You're not here by mistake. No. And let me just say it to you. I don't know, whatever you're feeling at the moment, however you're at home, whether you're feeling sad, whether you're feeling dejected, whether you're feeling fearful, you are not a failure because of those things. You are not a failure. All it is you just haven't found your purpose yet. Mm. And hopefully over the next 7 weeks, as we unfold this amazing story, that you can find your purpose as we bring different aspects each week, that will then help you step up and step out into the destiny that has been planned for you. As we finish this week, let me just ask a question that will come up through this series, because there's something on our heart that we want to do. There's something on our heart that we know we should be doing. In whatever time, whether it's just making a phone call to someone and giving them hope, being a friend, And yet, we don't do it out of fear. But this is a question that came up as Tammy was starting to prepare this series for us. And I want to leave you with it this week. And we'll keep bringing it up as we go. If not you, then who? If not you, then who? Let's take communion. Let's remember Jesus, because Jesus has set us free. Let's remember what he's done for us. That he went on the cross to pay for our sin. That he went on the cross for our healing. That his body was broken for us. That his blood was poured out for you and for me. So that we can have a hope. That we can see through things. That we can come through things. Sickness, bad decisions, sadness. At how life hasn't came out how we planned it. So let's just take communion now as the guys come up and get ready to lead us in worship. Let's take the bread and remember the body that was broken for us. As we look to the King, the true King, the real King, the King that came to set us free, not the King that came to conquer us, but to love us and help us live life to the full. And we drink of the juice or the wine, whatever you've got, as we remember the blood that was poured out. As we remember the blood that was poured out for us. It was poured out for our healing. It was poured out for our sin. For all the things that we've done wrong. You know, there is real joy in knowing that. There is real joy in knowing what Jesus did on the cross for me and for you. There is incredible joy because it sets us free. Free from the chains that hold us. Free from the chains that bind us. Free that keep us from the chains that keep us in bondage from being who we are meant to be. And the only way we know who we are meant to be is by being in him. Said it last week. The Bible says abide in him. And when we abide in him, he abides in us. So when we have part with him, he has part with us. So there is joy in knowing Jesus. And I just want to, as the guys start to come, that this morning, if you don't know Jesus, I just want to give you this moment to maybe ask Jesus into your life. Maybe ask him into your heart this morning to come and be a part with you. Because he's wonderful and he's awesome and he's amazing and he loves you beyond compare.
Yeah.
So you can, if you've never made that decision before, you can comment and amen, or we'll pray with you. You can send a private message into the church on WhatsApp, on Facebook or on YouTube. You can comment, and someone will pray with you. But he loves you beyond compare, and his plans and purposes for you are amazing, absolutely amazing. Don't let fear take you over. His love can bring perfect peace into your life. We're going to worship Jesus.
Child
Savior of the world was born. His body on the cross, His blood poured out for us. The weight of every cross upon
We
lifted high. We praise the name of Jesus. Praise your mighty name. We praise your mighty name. Wasana Mabiando Kuriana. Oh Lord, you're so wonderful, so glorious, so amazing, so magnificent. Forever your name. Forever your name. Oh, as the guys continue to play, we're going to take up our offering. And I know at the moment we can't physically be here to put in the bucket, but let me just invite you to give. Maybe you can do it by post. God isn't shut. The church may be shut for physical services, but God isn't shut. God is still at work. His church is still at work. There are still people that need to be loved. There are still people that need to be fed. There still needs to be a light on in our building, in our place of worship. So we're going to take up our offering now. And maybe you could send it in by cheque. Your gift for God. Maybe you can online banking. And this is our bank details. Barclays 10057444. And that will start there for a minute. 20 11 13. Maybe you could start a regular giving at this moment. Weekly, monthly, whatever it is. Maybe you put cash if you earn cash. Put it in an envelope and send it. Or get the Church Suite app, Restore Church. Most of you, if I've got your email, would have had an invite into that. Just download it and you can give through the app, and it's very secure. And it goes straight into the Restore Church account. Give. Don't make this a time of not giving, of not honouring what God calls us to do, which is give at least a tithe. Lord of all, bless your name. Bless your name.
You are the one at the beginning, one with God. worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I worship Your holy name. Reach and love and His flow through ever. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. There's thousand years for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I worship Your holy name. On that day when my strength is failing, the end drew near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I worship Your holy name. Yes, I worship Your holy name. Yes, I worship Your holy name.
Oh, bless the Lord. Oh, my soul. What a wonderful name. Bless Your name, Lord God. We worship You, we honour You. We want to glorify You with our lives. Thank You, Lord, that You love us. Thank You. Don't forget, as we're closing now, don't forget you can message us. You need prayer this morning. You just need a phone call from someone just to bring hope into your life. Then message us today and we'll do that. Bless you. Have a fantastic week. There may be some midweek stuff coming from the church as we move on further into this COVID-19. So just bless you. Have a great week. Lord, we just bless Your name. Lord, we want to see Your kingdom come. We want to see Your glory in this place and in the whole of this, wherever people are watching from. Lord, we want to see Your glory. We want to see Your peace. We want to see Your love reign. So Lord, we just praise Your name as we leave this place today. Amen.